Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone, and especially to our speaker today, Mr. Mohammad Abdul Hamid. How are you, Mr. Mohammad?
Alhamdulillah, good. How about you, Cik Saidi?
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. Welcome to our webinar. This webinar is actually brought to you by Malaysian Productivity Corporation, MPC. And this is actually the 44th series of webinar under the Competitiveness Talk series, where we have been focusing on Malaysia's competitiveness ranking on the World Competitiveness Yearbook, or also known as WCY by IMD. IMD, as we know, stands for International Institute for Management Development. But for today, we will also be focusing on our recent budget 2021, and specifically on what does it mean for income equality. At the same time, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone here that today we are open for Q&A. There's a box on top of your monitor where you can write question whenever you have any question to our speaker today, and I'll try and forward the question to Mr. Mohammad. And your participation is truly appreciated. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Mohammad Abdul Hamid. First and foremost, Mr. Mohammad is someone whom I am lucky enough to call a friend. He's very passionate about income equality, always talk about the poor. He talks about policy all the time, and especially behavioral insight. These are basically the topics that we discuss whenever we have a chance to talk, and it is always a delight, Mr. Mohammad. Mr. Mohammad is a public policy consultant specializing in behavioral insight and founder of Behavioral Insight Consultancy. His experiences include conducting case study, research, and webinar in public policy and behavioral insight. His consultancy work include income inequality, socio-economic, and behavioral insight studies. He has appeared in the media as a guest for television shows, and just recently the Nation and Midday Update on Bernama TV. He also writes opinion pieces in the media, from New Straits Times to Malay Mail and even to Malaysia Kini. Mohammad did his master in public policy. His research is in behavioral insight at University of Malaya, and he even did his master of philosophy in mathematics, focusing on fluid flow at the University of Cambridge, UK, under Chevening Scholarship. He attended training in behavioral science, because this is something that he studies, where he even went to go and attend a behavioral science focusing on nudging by a behavioral science expert, Dr. Phil Hansen. I dare say that Mr. Mohammad is the right person to talk about today's title, which is again, it's budget 2021. What does it mean for income equality? So I will open up the floor to you, Mr. Mohammad. Silakan, teruskan. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Shahidi, my colleague and friend, for the kind introduction. I would first like to thank you, MPC, Malaysia Productivity Corporation, especially the National Competitiveness Strategy Unit who organized this webinar today. I would also like to thank MPC for inviting me to share some of the thoughts for our topic today. I would like to welcome everyone, our viewers, who thank you very much for taking the time from your busy schedule to join us in this conversation. Hopefully we can have a conversation on this topic which is relevant to all of us in Malaysia, which is about income inequality. And in light of the budget 2021, which was recently presented by our Minister of Finance last Friday in the Parliament. So congratulations to MPC. I think we must also congratulate MPC for organizing this event. I think this is a very important event, especially when we talk about competitiveness. This is part of the webinar series on competitiveness, and it is very important for Malaysia to continue to be competitive on the world stage. As we all know, budget 2021 is an extraordinary budget for Malaysia, but not only for Malaysia, but for many countries throughout the world, primarily because of COVID-19 pandemic that the world is still facing, and continue to struggle to cope with the effects or the impact of the pandemic. Which is not only impacting public healthcare, but also our life as a whole. Our children's education, the way we work, and probably one of the most significant is to do with the economy, because that will have a direct significant impact to our livelihood. So budget 2021 is a very extraordinary budget because of the fact that we need to save life because of COVID-19 pandemic, and also to recover the economy that has been negatively impacted by the pandemic for the past maybe 3 quarters or so since early this year. Before I go to the slides, just like to kind of give just to refresh our to give a high-level view about the budget, just a very high level. But before I proceed on further, I think if anyone has any question or any comments, any thoughts or inputs, I think you can. There's a feature there in the webinar for you to give your comments by writing. I think in which our moderator and organizer will highlight as and when we have that. So I think feel free at any time to just write your questions and comments and all that. I think generally we have, I think the session is scheduled for 2 hours, but I'm not going to speak for 2 hours. We know it's not going to be effective. Our attention is limited. So I try to keep it within 1 hour or less, but we'll see how it goes. Budget 2021, the motto or the theme is Teguh Kita, Menang Bersama. So it's Teguh Kita, Menang Bersama. There are 3 kind of key objectives. One is to do with the well-being, kesejahteraan rakyat, well-being of the people. And secondly is about continuity of business, kelangsungan perniagaan. And thirdly is about ketahanan ekonomi, economic resilience. So those are the 3 key objectives of the budget 2021. And when in the topic that we are going to discuss today, income inequality, that primarily falls within the kesejahteraan rakyat, the well-being of the people in general. For many of us, or for many Malaysians, what we are facing now is about survival. And when we talk about survival, one of the components is about income, because people need to have sufficient income to continue livelihood, to be able to meet their basic needs, their food, their house, their children's education, their health. So all those. So income is a very important part in this modern age that we're living in. income is a very important element of our survival. And that brings us to the topic of discussion today. When we look at the budget 2021, what does it mean for income inequality? So by having this discussion or conversation today, hopefully it will trigger a more wide discussion among relevant stakeholders, be it in those who are involved directly in policy, or even those who are not directly involved in policy, including the public in general, who obviously are directly impacted with the current situation we are in, the pandemic, as well as the issue that we have with the economy. Okay, somehow my screen, let me just fix my screen first before we proceed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back on track.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about income inequality, I think it's about distribution of wealth of a nation, how the wealth of a nation is distributed among the population. And in recent time, one of the key or monumental work that is produced on income inequality is Capital in the 21st Century, which was authored by French economist Thomas Piketty in 2013. In that book, Piketty presented his argument about the issue of rising inequality, especially in the West, United States, as well as Europe. Despite progress or being an advanced countries or modern economy, free market, the West has been experiencing widening inequality, and that has caused a lot of discussion in the West. And when this book was published, it gained attention from the policymakers, from the leaders at the highest level in many countries in Europe, as well as in the United States. Locally in Malaysia, there's a work has been the issue of inequality is also nothing new. In fact, if we trace back even to our Dasar Ekonomi Baru, DEB, or a national new economic policy, that one of the key main drive for that policy is to address the issue of inequality among the population, among the various group of people in this country. And a more recent work in Malaysia on income inequality is the color of inequality, I think, which was published maybe several years ago, and this was written by local economist, popular local economist, Dr. Mohammad Khalid. They're available in both English and Malay. So when we talk about why I'm kind of starting with that is just to highlight that the issue of income inequality is not unique to Malaysia. It's a global issue facing not only developing countries or middle income countries, while Malaysia being a high middle income countries, but also this issue is also being faced by the countries who are already ahead of us, who are already advanced in terms of their economies, countries who are already developed. So the issues are widespread all over the world, and it has created a lot of discussion among leaders, policymakers, and the public, NGOs, and it is when we talk about income inequality, it's obviously it's about I mentioned earlier. Now it's about survival. Income being a very important part of that, but obviously it's about welfare also, welfare of the people, because it relates directly with the well-being of the population. Income inequality have significant implication on poverty eradication policies and programs, and importantly also, income inequality contribute to social cohesion. Meaning that if there's a wide gap of disparity in income or wealth, then social cohesion will not be that good normally. But if you have a more equal society, then society will be, people will be happier. Obviously, the population will be happier, and social cohesion will be better. So why I mentioned this also, because from competitiveness perspective, especially when we look at IMD competitiveness ranking, in which Malaysia also participate, social cohesion is also one of the criteria in the ranking, in addition to income inequality, which is measured using Gini coefficient for the purpose of IMD World Competitiveness Ranking. So that's kind of a quick introduction. Like I mentioned earlier, the issue of income inequality is not unique to Malaysia. It's happening all over the world. In fact, if we look at some of the issues happening in the UK, the Brexit, and the rise of populism in the United States, rise of Trump before in 2016, is also associated with the feeling of deprivation among the general public, feeling of that the elites is controlling the bulk of a nation's wealth. So yeah, it's on the income inequality is on the global agenda. I've shown on the slides there the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals, Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations, and goal number 10 is about income inequality. Goal number 1 is to eradicate poverty in all its form everywhere. So there are 2 goals in SDG goals that are very directly relevant to income inequality, which is poverty, number 1, and goal number 10 is reduce inequality. Is about income inequality and wealth as well. So income inequality is on the global agenda, on the United Nations agenda. And when we look at SDG, it relates to Agenda 2030 because according to the commitment given by countries all over the world, countries members of the United Nations, by 2030, you want to be able, the world has a consensus to achieve the 17 goals by 2030. But now we are already in 2020, going into 2021. We have less than 10 years to go, and with the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic and various other issues that the world is facing between countries, US, for example, when Trump was in power, still in power today, he does not seem to believe in the issues on climate change and various other issues that are relevant to achieving Agenda 2030 in Sustainable Development Goals. So there are issues obviously before the pandemic, but the pandemic has made it worse, meaning that meaning there's a real challenge that the 2030 agenda is unlikely to be met. But we'll see. We have few 9 more years to go. On the regional level, we have there's a study also on income inequality, and same we're seeing income inequality on the rise, and in Malaysia we have that Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama, which was launched sometime in the third quarter 2019 last year, and the second principle. There are 3 principles in WKB, Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama, or the SPV, Shared Prosperity Vision. The 3 key principles in there, one of which is to do with, the second one is about addressing wealth and income disparities. So the topic that we are talking today is a very important topic on the national agenda, as well as global and regional agenda as well, being the second objective in the second principle in the shared prosperity vision that the country is hoping to address as we approach year to 2030. And not only that, like I mentioned earlier, income inequality also affects our competitiveness on global scale, how competitive we are as a country. Obviously, there are many criteria that contributes towards the ranking, and income inequality is one of the criteria measured using Gini coefficient within one of the 4 factors contributing to the ranking, the competitiveness ranking. And Gini coefficient falls under the factor of government efficiency. Maybe it's not that clear on the slide. It's the green box on the slide, which is government efficiency. Income inequality is one of the criteria that is evaluated to come up with the ranking. And quickly on the technical part, Gini coefficient, which is a measure of income inequality, look at or measure a deviation of distribution of income among individuals in a household within a country. So the curve on the right hand side on the chart, the vertical axis is actually cumulative income share for the whole population, and the horizontal axis is the cumulative population number in a particular country. And the way to read this in simple term, a value of 1 or 100% refers to absolute inequality, meaning that the wealth of a country is only concentrated only to 1%. And on the other extreme, a value of 0 represents absolute equality, meaning that everyone in the country have the same wealth. But yeah, so that is probably a utopia, but it's just a way to measure the income inequality. And obviously there are weaknesses in Gini coefficient measure, and therefore it is important that on top of Gini coefficient, we, the policymakers, the politicians, the leaders, should also look at other relevant measures that look at this dimension of income inequality. For example, there's a Palma ratio, there's a Thiel ratio, and the good thing is in the most recent household income survey published by our Department of Statistics, they have already published some of these numbers, the Thiel ratio, which shows the concentration of wealth on the top end as well as the bottom end of the population. It's so that's the key point here is that Gini coefficient is one measure to look at income inequality, but to have a more complete picture, it's also important that we look at other criteria of income inequality, and that may also include, because it's very related to the issues of poverty. So probably it's also important to look at measures of poverty as well. For example, the MPI, the multidimensional poverty index, the PLI for poverty line income, relative poverty, and various other measures, so that we have a complete whenever, especially among policymakers or those who study income inequality, will have, by looking at various measures or indices, will have a more comprehensive picture about the issue. Generally, there are various pillars on how to address inequality. One is to do with public services, providing education, health, and social protection to the people. And secondly, is because those are basic needs that people need. With education, people can have social mobility. With health, they can go to work. And obviously, with social protection, when there's a shock as in loss of income, be it because of pandemic, because of retrenchment, because of health reasons, then he or she will have that social protection, be it in terms of saving, in terms of insurance, retirement savings, and all that. Second part, to reduce of the second pillar to reduce income inequality is about progressive taxation, as opposed to regressive tax system to a particular country. So when we talk about progressive taxation, it's about you can argue that it's a more fair tax system according to the level of income or wealth of people in a country. And finally, the third pillar is about labor. How fair is the labor market to the workers, especially the low income, the vulnerable, women's rights of the workers? How is it taken care of? I'm trying to move to the next. I'm trying to move to the next slide. Somehow my my screen froze. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure. There are a few questions here actually, but I think some of the question is better for you to answer it later because it's regarding KWSP.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and even about youth unemployment. So I think it's better for it to be addressed later.
Okay, Ken. Still trying to fix my my screen. Not sure.
Maybe you can stop the slides first. Can you exit from the slides? Okay.
Yeah. Seems okay. Yeah.
This is pretty much typical of a webinar actually. All this technical suddenly pop up.
Sorry for the, okay, let's see whether.
Maybe you can stop the slide first and then re-enter, reshare.
Yeah, it seems to be hanging. Can
Are you
we
able
can
to
we take
stop the
a?
slides first?
No, unfortunately not. It's hanging. Can we
Okay.
take my apologies? Can we take a 2 minutes break and I'll try to reboot my computer?
Yeah, I think you can do that first.
Yeah. In the meantime, I hope Mr. Shahidi can entertain our
Sure.
viewers. My apologies for the.
Sure. Meanwhile, while Mr. Mohammad is trying to fix the issue, I think this is a good time for us to look into some of the questions, because I've seen a few questions here. Thank you, Mr. Kamel, for the well wishes. Someone wishes us well. Yeah, the first question is regarding EPF. Whether it is better for the government to give 10,000 ringgit withdrawn from account 1, or is the 500 a month suggestion is the better way? Another question is about regarding youth employment because of pandemic. So maybe this is something that we can talk later. It is quite related to issue of inequality, especially when it comes to our EPF saving. We are still open for questions, so if there's any question, you can always write down in the box. And as we can hear just now, it is quite interesting, especially in terms of Gini coefficient. I found it to be quite interesting in terms of how do we fare in the graph, whether we do have the issues of system casta as we believe so or not, and how are we compared to countries where we think system casta is the main issue, such as India, etc. But I guess Mr. Mohammad will go into that later. While here, we are wishing for speedy recovery for Mr. Mohammad.
Okay.
And I think this is also the right time for us to go and have coffee or maybe have a drink first, and maybe a minute break. Oh, Mr. Mohammad is here. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the for the technical
okay.
error. For some reason. Yeah. Okay. I'll try not to go to not to go to full screen.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Okay. Let's try. I hope it's not gonna.
Yeah.
Okay. You just left just now. Sorry. With the pillars. Now let's look at long-term Gini coefficient. This is showing the Gini coefficient for Malaysia for almost 40 years, from 1979 until 2019. So over the period, we have done. It's the orange bar. It's the orange bar. You can see there's well, obviously from visually, maybe you can see a gradual reduction, which is an improvement, positive, that's good. From 50.5 or 0.5 50.5% or 0.5 Gini coefficient to 40.7 in 2019. So generally, over 40 years, our income inequality has improved. But obviously, that's a very long term. Let's look at a more short term. This is from the IMD competitiveness ranking. There's 3 curves here, but we just have to give attention to the gray curve. Apology for the color, but out of more than 60 countries ranked in the IMD World Competitiveness Ranking, Malaysia has been consistently ranked at below 40th position. In fact, in 2011, we were at 52 position, position number 52. In recent in 2020, we were still at below 40th position. So in terms of competitiveness, what this chart is showing us is that we are still far behind. We are still compared to in relative to other countries, despite the fact that over a long period of time, over long-term period, we have improved. But on the global scale, we are not doing very well, meaning that other countries has done better in terms of Gini coefficient compared to our country, despite the progress that we have made in terms of development of the countries. With that,
sorry, Mr. Mohammad. Well, waiting for you just now, I did talk about Gini coefficient. What is the best country? What is the top ranking country? Maybe you can share the highest ranking.
Top country, they are mostly in Europe, Scandinavian country, but
obviously,
the Norway, Sweden, and all that. But for 2020, it's the top country, number 1 in the ranking is a small country in Europe, Slovenia.
Okay.
It's a relatively small country, about I think 3 or 3 million population. But generally, they are Taiwan also not doing very bad on this part of the world. Singapore is about same rank with Malaysia. So you see, despite Singapore being more advanced in terms of their development, in terms of their economy, but they are also about the same rank with us, meaning that their income inequality on the global ranking is not that good either.
Meaning disparity between the rich and the poor are quite high.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what happened also in the US and some other Western advanced developed countries in Europe, which relates to the earlier point that I mentioned earlier about the work by Thomas Piketty, showing that despite all the material progress, despite all the advancement in technology, this income inequality or disparity is widening. Well, of course, to put that into context, what Piketty was working on or looking at, studying on is a very long period, I think for approximately 100 years, over a century. So, but of course, that is sad reality, considering that capitalism and free market economy, obviously has bring a lot of benefit as well in terms of lifting up the quality of life of people, but come with it something probably that has not been expected by the forefathers of the free market economy, is the issue of income inequality. Now let's look at the current realities of Malaysia, because I think this is important before we kind of because of when we talk about budget 2021, it must be able to address the issues that we are currently facing. As mentioned earlier, one of the key issue that is facing the country is loss of or reduced income. Loss of income because people lose job, and reduced income because people cannot get a job that give them same or similar income as before the pandemic. So, for example, we see people get retrenched from I don't know, engineer or professional, but now have to do Grab or have to sell food. You know, from pilot, you see, I read the other day about a pilot. Once a pilot now have to, you know, have to open a food business, a small food business. So so that's one issue, one of the key issue facing loss or reduction of income because of the pandemic. Secondly, is education is disrupted because of the fact that the schools are closed, now close again. So the short term, we see disruption in the education of our children, but in the long term, we don't know how is it going to affect social mobility. The COVID-19 also bring to the open the lack of social protection to many Malaysians. A recent study by UNICEF and United Nations UNFPA shows that poor families in Kuala Lumpur before this last year, before the pandemic, already many people don't have saving, but because of the pandemic now, as of September, 5% increase in the number of people, poor people who do not have savings at all. And that number is quite staggering, quite high at 68%. And the current realities obviously is about, people have been talking about new normal. What we see is changing face of the economy. Some sectors are pretty much shut down. You can say, for example, the aviation industry, those working in the airlines industry, partly in the tourism industry, also almost paralyzed. And obviously, people who are in the jobs where they have to be at the physical work location, I don't know, maybe, you know, construction industry or some other jobs, then obviously their livelihood, the sector is pretty much paralyzed because of the pandemic. So those are some of the realities. So it's a very difficult situation right now. What we are facing, the issues that are being faced by our the Malaysians, the rakyat in general, in various aspects in terms of their economy, income, education of the children, and loss of jobs, things like that. Unemployment, as mentioned earlier, in May, it was reported the highest, we see the highest unemployment in Malaysia, over 5%. It was reported that that is the highest unemployment rate in Malaysia for 27 years. So that just you know, demonstrate or shows how severe the situation is. But I think what is also often overlooked or do not know, normally people do not see, is underemployment. When we say about underemployment, it's about people who cannot get enough job. As in, for example, they by definition they only work 30 hours or less a week. Not because they don't want to work, but because of the nature of work, they can only work 30 hours a week. This can be people who work in the gig economy, you know, the food delivery workers, those who do the, you know, share riding and all that, those in the gig economy, and as well as people, to a certain extent, people who are in the informal sector as well, informal sector of the economy. So the extent of damage of this is underplayed. Currently, I understand that before this, it is only reported once a year. So that's probably why maybe there's been less attention on the issue of underemployment. And this also relates to the issue that I highlighted earlier. For example, people who were professional, doing you know, earning higher salary before, but now because of a pandemic, they have to make do with lower income job. there are just highlighting where. Okay, now we are going into the Belanjawan 2021, budget 2021. Measures to address income inequality comes in various ways, but the most important, obviously, is about saving lives. Because without livelihood, then forget about talk about income inequality, disparity, and all that. So there's a allocation given, budget given for COVID fund, but of course, or not is sufficient or not, that remains to be seen, because it's something you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And as we speak today, this the overall debate on budget is still ongoing, so there could be some further changes or fine-tuning before the final version of the budget. There's Bantuan Prihatin Rakyat, BPR, which is supposed to be able to cater to 8 million, over 8 million Malaysians in the form of cash assistance or cash transfer. On top of that, there's also assistance to vulnerable groups, single mothers, people with disabilities, children who's going to school. But what's lacking are cash assistance for university students among the vulnerable groups. Allowances, there are allowances given or incentive and subsidies for those in rural areas, farmers and fishermen, those working in rubber plantation, microcredit for women entrepreneurs, and EPF or KBLSP withdrawal. Even though this is coming from retirement saving of members, and it is quite I think it's a very difficult decision to come to where it is today, which allow people to withdraw from their retirement saving nest eggs. And on top of that, workers will have their EPF monthly EPF contribution reduced to from 11% to 9%, so that they will have more disposable income, take-home pay in this difficult period. So there are various measures already highlighted, consistent with the budget 2021 objective to take care of the well-being of kesejahteraan rakyat. In terms of creating jobs for people who lose jobs, there are various incentives or there are various initiatives as well. For example, the scheme jaminan pekerjaan, which is supposed to create more than 500,000 jobs. There's My Step for 50,000 jobs, reskilling of people working in the airline industry, and for the job search allowance for people who are still looking for a job. SOCSO will extend their job search allowance to 9 months, and this is targeted to benefit more about 130,000 unemployed Malaysians. So those are highlighted that initiative provided by Belanjawan 2021 to address income inequality. Then the question is whether that is sufficient. So those are, I think, some of the discussion that has been going on since it was presented last Friday. There's been a lot of discussion going on among the public, among the politicians, and obviously in Parliament, as MPs, as Member of Parliament debate this. So whether it's sufficient, whether it's not enough. So those are some of the questions being raised. But obviously part of it to me is crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. In fact, now we are facing with the third wave of the pandemic. Nobody really, if we 2 or 3 months ago, nobody would have predicted that we will be in a third wave. And at the end of the day, when we talk about budget Belanjawan, it's about implementation to ensure that it reach the efficiency and effectiveness required, meeting the target groups that is supposed to meet, and obviously ultimately achieving the objective that has been set. This is another way of looking at income inequality. Produced by, this is quite recent, produced by Khazanah Research in 2019. Data shown here is before the pandemic. It's showing on the vertical scale, vertical axis, the Gini coefficient, the horizontal axis, the Palma ratio. It's also just another measure of income disparity, and this is done plotted by state. This is by state, setiap negeri, setiap negeri kat Malaysia. So you can see here the worst is the one on the right hand corner lah, right hand ya, ujung bucu tepi kanan tu kan. Right hand corner, I think is Sabah. Sabah seems to be the worst country in Malaysia. In terms of disparity, the better one will be Perlis, Labuan, Pahang, and Terengganu. So this is a good step. I think this is a good, to me, this is a good work by Khazanah Research in terms of just looking just now. What I have presented so far is macro level, very high level, national level figure, 40%. You know, but it's a general. It's good to get a general feel of what's happening in the country. But now taking a step further, look at by state. What is the state of income disparity between each state, and if we can take this step further to by district, for example, in KL maybe by because KL no district, by parliament in KL, then obviously the program or the intervention that's going to be implemented can be more targeted, and that's in fact one of the recommendations that I have for this for this. So now let's look at the recommendations for the budget 2021. Obviously, I think without without us even discussing here, there's probably going to be a review of what's going to happen on the COVID-19 fund. Whether there should be obviously there's been requests or demand to increase the COVID-19 fund to cater for the livelihood of the people, as well as to cater for the vaccine that is expected to be available next year. So there's been comments, for example, from public healthcare professional about COVID-19 fund. So maybe there's a need to review a COVID-19 fund. And obviously, again, this is something that's going to be happening in the future. Whatever decision we make today is based on the best estimate that we have. So therefore, there has to be flexibility in terms of implementation. And echoing from the previous chart that I showed just now, where it shows income disparity by state, I think going forward, we should go for micro targeting, so that the limited resource that we have, the allocation that we have from budget, can be targeted accordingly. Be it for bantuan prihatin rakyat, be it for cash assistance for the vulnerable groups, be it for the allowances, incentives, subsidies, and all that. Micro targeting, in a sense that we have to consider variation in cost of living, because different states will have different cost of living. Klang Valley will have higher cost of living compared to Perlis or Kedah. So therefore, there is a point for consideration that in terms of the amount, the cash amount that is assistance given to the people, those living in the in a location with higher cost of living should rightly get more compared to people who live in a cheaper place. So that's what that means. And obviously now with the data science, the technology in data science, technology is there if you want to do a more targeted program. Thirdly, just now we look at some of the initiative is to do with job creation. to create jobs, but we look at the numbers that's going to be created. More than 500,000 new jobs will be created to cater for people, more primarily for people who are unemployed. But what's also important is to create quality jobs, to tackle not only unemployment, sorry for there's a typo there, unemployment, but also underemployment, which has not been kind of given more the focus in it. And when I said about quality jobs, it's about obviously to be guided by the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals there, and obviously when guided by Sustainable Development Goals, job creation also have to address the two goals that we talked about earlier, about which is relevant to the directly relevant to the topic we talk about today, which is addressing poverty and income disparity. So those two goals as SDG, and we have that in WKB 2030 as well. That is a guiding document in job creation. So that is just not just creating jobs just for the sake of creating jobs. Of course, we say that people cannot choose at this difficult period. People cannot be very choosy, but at the same time, we must remember that what we want is for people to be able to sustain their livelihood for a long period of time, so that they can be better off in terms of their income, in terms of social mobility, and less people will have less reliant on government. I think that should be a kind of end goal, so that less and less people have to rely on government aids. People are more independent, more resilient, have their own social protection, can be independent, and therefore, because if we are to rely only on government to provide, government will always have a limited resource, and obviously government has to prioritize resource according to needs, only giving aids to those who are really in need. And quality jobs also means emphasis on high value add, high productivity. I think this is very relevant to competitiveness. We need to just be more innovative, more creative to create value add to the economy. And obviously, when we talk about that, we cannot run away from utilizing knowledge from science and technology, and as much as possible using locally developed technology, so that we develop local capacity for our own economy in the long run. And agriculture, I think there's also talk. There's probably a need for more emphasis on agriculture, so that we can bring down. Well, one is about our own food security, but on top of that is also about being able to reduce the cost of food for the public. So that is probably one area that maybe should be more emphasis on agriculture, and agriculture based on technology now, because now it's about precision farming and going for high-tech agriculture. And we have rightly, we are in the rural areas, we have plenty of unused land that can be utilized for agriculture. And the other measure that I think can be done is to look at how we can reduce cost of living for the people. Food costs, for example, is the highest element when we combine food consumed at home and food consumed away at home. That forms the largest category of expenditure category within a Malaysian household. Close to 40% is spent on food on monthly basis, and that is higher to lower income household. So if we can bring down cost of food, then it can help in terms of reduce expenditure for the household. And when expenditure of household is reduced, hopefully then residual income, baki duit dia will be more, and therefore he or she can save more, can save for the future, and that will form some form of social saving and social security lah for the people. And I think in this age, obviously, it's important also in implementing budget 2021, there has to be a closer collaboration between public sector, university, where our academicians, the best brains are doing research that are relevant to real world. Obviously, there are challenges there, but partnership and collaboration between involving private sector and NGO, those should be the way forward. And I think in the spirit of kita jaga kita also, I think we also and the fact that government resource, I think we should encourage and also where possible institutionalize philanthropy of giving, the culture of giving, to the needy people among the population. But obviously, there has to be organized in a more structured manner. Next is mid to long term. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Mid to long term, I think we have to rethink about education. Because education plays an important role in reducing the gap or income inequality, disparity. This is mid to long term, yeah. Considering a new normal and the future of work. Future of work. One of the recent article talks about the importance of inculcating or having creative people. People have to be creative to be able to survive in the future in the workplace. That will be a very valuable asset. Being creative is a highly valuable asset in the future. In terms of economy, again, it's about creating value add to the economy. Then I think there has to be a more aggressive promotion to create a more conducive ecosystem for national innovation system, in which all the players in the public sector, private sector, university, research institutions, NGO come together and be able to create value to the economy, and through relevant policies and initiatives, and obviously budget allocation as well. Going forward, we have to be more inclusive. I mentioned earlier about many people who do not have social protection. So also one of the focus going forward, we have to upgrade, if I can use that word, upgrade social protection system, especially for those in the informal sector of the economy who mostly do not have social protection. But obviously that relates back to the data, because data for people in informal sector may be not as good compared to those in informal sector. So obviously there has to be work as well on the data side to make sure that we have good data on the people in the informal sector. And as we go forward, living in a very uncertain world, age of disruption, knowing what works for the people is becoming more complicated and complex, and I think that's where the role of doing policy experiments is important, to make sure that whatever initiatives or policies that government do in the budget or in the various policy really works, and produce the necessary evidence within the context of evidence-based policy. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of partnership between various players. In conclusion, we know COVID-19, the pandemic has aggravated or make the issue of income disparity worse. In the budget 2021, there has been various provisions, allocations to take care well-being of the people and income of the people, and therefore address the income inequality. We need to upgrade our social protection system to cater for the whole population, and we must remember challenges remain, and this is the time maybe for us to chart new growth path for economy for the Malaysia, and this is so that we can create a high value add economy that we have always wanted to do, but unable to do for the past 2 decades. I think the COVID-19 should be a wake-up call for everyone in policy making, as well in the government, as well as all other stakeholders, the public as well. There has to be a new way of doing things. We cannot be going after the third wave is over. Obviously, naturally people have a tendency to go back to what we've been used to be doing before. But I think that is where maybe the policymakers, the government has to play a role, because it's going to be a different world, and that's the importance of leadership to chart a new development growth path. And I think it's to put it in short, it's a call to action. I think I've talked so much, but I think at the end of the day, it's a call to action. It's a very pressing need to take action fast and take concrete action to do the necessary reforms so that our economy can grow and prepare ourselves to the future, so that we can create a resilient society and a resilient nation. To end my presentation, I want to quote something that is from United Nations, in the Sustainable Development Goals, very relevant to what we talk about today. This is taken from the goal number 17. Number 17 in Sustainable Development Goals, which is partnerships for the goals, talking about the importance of partnerships in everything that we do to achieve sustainable development. Successful sustainable development agenda requires partnerships between governments, private sector, and civil society. These inclusive partnerships build upon principles and values, a shared vision. We are fortunate we already have a shared vision, shared prosperity vision, shared goals that place people and planet at the center. So that's the key emphasis, that put people and planet at the center of our policy, at the center of our attention, at the center of our focus, at global, regional, national, as well as local level. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention. I apologize for the error on my side. I welcome any comments or questions. Thank you. Over to you, Shahidi.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mohammad, for the wonderful insight, wonderful talk that he just gave. I do agree that COVID-19 is not just in my opinion, it's not just a wake-up call, but a knock on the head. It's something that, as Sheikh Mohammad said just now, we call to action. It's something that we need to start and do and move, and not just to discuss and on the idea stage as what we have seen for a long time. Sheikh Mohammad, we do have a few questions. There are a few questions. I would like to ask you the first question. It's regarding EPF. And the question is from Mr. Kamal. He asked whether it's better for the government to just give one shot payment of around 10,000, or is the 500 every month is good. So he's asking for your opinion. And then there's Tengku Zach, who is asking about youth. Thing that can affect our youth on this belanjawan. He even asked about youth employment, I think the general understanding. And he's giving one suggestion or even a question: reduce all the politician and minister salary to improve inequality. Am I right? He's representing youth in Malaysia. So maybe your opinion on EPF, whether 500 ringgit every month or 10,000 is the right move, or which one is the better move? And what about youth employment and salary of politicians and ministers?
Okay, for the first question on EPF, I think number one, in my opinion, EPF is retirement savings. That is the account one in EPF is rightly cannot be touched, but because of the extraordinary situation we are in, then there's this unusual need, once in a lifetime, maybe once in a lifetime need to withdraw, to be able to withdraw that saving from account one. So that's point number one. But that means that because for the survival of today, so in my opinion, it should be only for survival, meaning to be able to meet the needs. So that should be the purpose. Secondly, I think from policymakers' perspective, as well as the public also, majority of people, EPF members, do not have sufficient savings for retirement. So that's another issue. In fact, one of the study, I did a study on retirement savings in 2019, but it's an issue among EPF members that they do not have sufficient retirement savings, considering that they're going to be living, well, we don't know when they're going to, what's their life expectancy, but on average, Malaysians live about 75 years old. So, and you can withdraw EPF saving from 55, fully withdraw from 55. Meaning that once you withdraw at 55, you have 20 years. 20 years to live, if you live by average, average 20 years.
Yeah.
If we don't have enough saving, EPF members, because we don't have pension, right? People who are EPF members don't have pension, unlike government servants. Then obviously, number one, they either have to work, to continue to work, which is not bad. It's not bad as long as people are healthy. After 55, they can continue to work to meet their livelihood. So that's not a problem. I think many people are already working well above 55, even up to 60 or even above 60. So that's one. So those are kind of just to give some background on that. But of course, there is something that's going to happen in the future. To some people, maybe very. To some people, though, to younger people, that's going to be like so far away in the future. But for those who are already, say, 50, 51, it's only a few years away before they can withdraw fully. So sorry, I'd like to explain that first, because I think that it's important to understand the context.
True.
because it's not, maybe if we withdraw now, it's gonna address our needs now, which is important, very important, but later it's gonna be a future problem for
Yes.
for us also. So, but it's a difficult situation. But going back to the question, to me, if you personally, I think it's okay either way, because okay either way in that, okay, number one is obviously if we don't believe that people can manage their own money, then you just give it like monthly lah, 500 ringgit, so that people don't just spend. They get say 10,000 one go, go shopping whatever, habis terus. Because that is the issue also with EPF. Many people, history has shown that within few years they already finish their retirement saving. So I think those are consideration for the people that make the policy, or have to think of. But on the other hand, we know that some people are good in their financial management. Then they are disciplined, have good discipline. Then that's okay. They can manage that. So to me, is okay either way. Maybe what can be done is to customize, or to customize, because to me, because it's not different people can have different circumstances. Obviously, we cannot, from policy perspective, EPF or government cannot cater for 14 million. There are 40 million members, right? EPF 14 over 14 million. Obviously, they cannot have like 14 million solution for 40 million people, for 40 million members. But I think there can be groups, for example, certain group there can be variations, just more than one option for people to choose. I think that will be better to be able to cater the needs of different people who may be in a different circumstances. Yeah, so there's no right or wrong way, but different people will have different needs, and that's the importance of having a customized solution with various different type of interventions because of diverse needs of the members. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but
no, but I do agree. But and at the same time, we, the one who's going to take the money, need to understand whether it's out of desperation or whether it's just for leisure, kan? So I guess it's up to us juga in terms of undermining and whether we want for the monthly or one shot, because it's us who's going to manage the money, right?
Yeah.
And the next question, tadi, yeah.
Yeah, I think because Mr. Shahidi and me would know that, I mean, we are both familiar with our practitioner in behavioral insights. We know that many people have issue with self-control.
Yeah.
Like it or not, many people in reality have issue with self-control, and that include when we have money. And that's why, well, I don't like to make generalization, but I think we have to recognize that human part, that part of human nature that people do. Many people have issues with self-control. So those are considerations as well that before making that decision. The second part of the question is about youth. In terms of employment, there's that initiative about that will create jobs generally for the population, for the unemployed persons, even though it doesn't kind of categorize this is for youth or this is for the elder part or the older generation. So in terms of jobs is there, but I think what is important again is about, if you look at the data of unemployment before COVID, highest number of unemployment are among university graduates. And therefore that has led to a certain extent mismatch between qualification and job, meaning that people have a degree, young people have a university degree, but because he or she cannot get a job that commensurate with his or her qualification of a degree, then he or she has to take a job for that doesn't require a degree qualification, a diploma maybe. So so those are mismatch. So I think those that goes back to my point earlier, my recommendation, the importance of creating quality jobs, so that we are moving towards a high value add economy. But obviously that is not easy. Government has been trying to do that for many years. If some of our viewers live long enough, would know, for example, many years ago, there's initiative called K-economy, knowledge economy. That I think more than 15 years ago, government already talking about that. And I think within the last 10 years, government talk about NEM, new economic model, also to bring us into high value add economy. So that is why I think relates back to my recommendation, the importance of having that conducive ecosystem, national innovation system. The concept is called national innovation system. The scholars that kind of pioneered these ideas is economists Schumpeter and Richard Nelson, one of the scholars that look at science innovation policy, science technology innovation policy. So we really have to, if we really want to give good job, quality jobs, we really have to go for that innovation policy, very important. But having said, and institutions like university, research institutions have a very important role to play to contribute towards that. But having said that, we know, for example, that innovation does not only occur in university, does not only occur through research, but it can also occur through businesses, entrepreneurs. In fact, many of the successful business occur outside academia. You look at Facebook, look at Apple, we look at Grab, even Grab, so they are from entrepreneur people. So I think those are maybe we need that culture, innovative culture, and if we can inculcate, or if we can get our young people to have that innovative mindset, then that would be wonderful. Meaning that it's not only government, it's not only university, it's not only education system, but everyone play their role despite whatever issues, despite whatever challenges that they have.
The question, quite an angry question about politician and minister salary.
Okay. So I think there has been there's been various suggestion, kan? There have been various suggestion. Why not, isn't it? But how do you go about doing it? Whether I guess that's the question. So that's probably why one of the pillar of addressing disparity is progressive tax. So even if you cannot cut their salary, they have to pay higher tax. Obviously that has to go through parliament also lah, to to approve that. So can be done.
At least we understand, because from Tengku Zek question, I guess he's representing the youth. He himself said that he's representing the youth. Maybe that is the sentiment that the youth are having right now. There's also a question from Ms. Hazlin Muhammad Sali. Her question is, how can we provide the jobs that will be filled by foreign workers to our local? I think salary and benefit are main issue we are facing now. Lower salary compared to Indonesia. Our wage structure should be like this for entry-level position. Low skill minimum wage is around 1,600 ringgit. Medium skill SPM and above is around 2,000 ringgit, and high skill grads around 2,800. So question of wage structure and salary and benefit issues. What is your opinion, Mr. Mohammad?
Okay, if I understand the question correctly, let me try to address it from two angles. Number one, I think it has been recognized that due to the abundance of low skill foreign workers in our country, that has suppressed the salary and wages for local workers because of relative ease of obtaining foreign workers in Malaysia. So that's an issue that has been going on. And I think that's why one of my recommendations is this is the time for us to rechart our economy, to find a new growth chart. The fact that I think, I believe now there's less foreign workers in this country because they have to go back. So maybe that's there's a need. Obviously, there's a need to revise, to change our policy on foreign workers, especially low skill foreign workers. And because of relative ease to obtain low skill foreign workers, there is no incentive for the industry to move to high value add, to technology, isn't it? Because you can get cheap foreign workers, so why and still make hefty profit? There's no incentive for industry to go for technology. Malaysia is seen as one of the Bank Negara report shows that suggested that because of the way we position ourselves, Malaysia position ourselves as a low value add economy, then that send a signal to investor to shift to only do low value add activity here, invest in low value add activity, whereas high value add is invested in other countries. So that's one part of the thing, which I think there's a need to be a revision to the policy on our foreign workers, low skill foreign workers. Otherwise, we cannot move up. Otherwise, we cannot move up to a more value add, higher technology economy. There's no drive. And secondly, a recent presentation or finding, a recent finding by renowned economists, local economist, Professor Fatimah Kari, who's University Malaya. Professor Fatimah Kari, who last week she presented a paper in a conference by World Bank. World Bank did online conference last week on in celebration of World Poverty Day, and one of the startling finding is that the salary of workers in plantation sector, because normally I think the general perception is that salary of those working in plantation is relatively low compared to if you work in other sector of the economy. But her study, Prof. Fatimah Kari has 30 years experience, very experienced, one of the renowned scholar in poverty in Malaysia. She highlighted that the finding is that it's not true. In fact, plantation can give decent pay. Plantation sector give decent pay, contrary to popular perception. So that's another part, and the final part. I think I'm a firm believer that we should be moving towards living wage. Living wage, because right now we already have minimum wage. There's a legislation, a law on that. Living wage, minimum wage, but minimum wage is still relatively low, 1,100 ringgit, right? 1,100 ringgit. Lower if it's a single income household, is lower than the revised PLI, poverty line income, which is over 2,200 ringgit. It's less than half, less than half. So so that means I think we should be moving to living wage. Let me just show. There's a very beautiful slide which I didn't show earlier. Okay, let me see if I can share this. So basically, it looks at cost of living.
The US, yeah.
Yeah, if you look at cost of living, yeah. So there's a map there. Sorry, there's a map there. So different, because different states. This is a map of United States. Different color, different shades of blue. Different states have different cost of living, because just like us here lah. In Sabah, in Peninsula tak sama, Sabah Sarawak, in Klang Valley, it's not the same with Kelantan. So they have every now and then they update their living wage. Living wage refer to minimum acceptable living standard, so that people live way above poverty. Not only just poverty line, but people have enough income so that they can live a dignified life. Don't have to ask around, don't have to rely on charity, don't have to rely on government, don't have to rely on zakat, have enough and can participate. What is important is living wage allow people to participate in society. Don't have to worry about job, don't have to do multiple job, siang kerja, malam bawa Grab, you know. So that should be the way forward to me. We have living wage, good. We already have living wage. Minimum wage, good. We have that legislation. But I think going forward, we should get our minimum wage. If you want to use that same legislation to push that towards living wage. And the good thing is, Bank Negara has done a study. Bank Negara has done a study on living wage. EPF also done through what they call last year Belanjawanku, which is also a form of living wage. So there's already work been done by institutions within Malaysia based on real findings in Malaysia. They've done field work, collected data from FGD, a focus group discussion, and came out. There's a methodology to come out with living wage. So I think ideally that's what we that's one option. Making sure that moving towards minimum wage to be same with living wage. And another thing that we can do is the fact that we are in this big framework of SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, in which two of the goals is related to poverty and income inequality. Therefore, we should encourage, we as in government and policy makers, I think should encourage the industry, private sector to give decent wage to their workers. And maybe government, I don't know, maybe can formulate certain incentive so that private sector can adopt that. You know, there are other countries have done it, but I think one good example is IKEA. IKEA, furniture tu. The place where ramai kita suka pergi kan. IKEA, dia buat voluntarily. Maknanya dia tak tunggu government. Because they are, so that shows the company has a very good value tau. Meaning tak perlu ada regulation, tak perlu ada policy. It's their own initiative to give decent wage to their workers. They take care of the welfare of the workers. So that's ideally we want to be moving towards that because of course regulations is important. Regulation can play its role. Probably we need that legislations. But ideally we want in the longer term we want to move towards where people see the value, and people, for example, private sector realize that they have to be in compliance with SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, not only for profit,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry again, long-winded answer for a short question.
Yeah, I hope that answers Ms. Hazlin's question. And as you can see, today's session is quite wonderful. We got to learn quite a lot, especially for me myself, in terms of Gini coefficient when it comes to our kind of like micro level. When you mention Selangor, KL, that is quite an eye-opening for me, because we've not seen that before. Kan? We are not used to that kind of data. So understanding that, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted because Ms. Hazlin asked another question. Job bank for, can't really 1 million at 1,600 a month. What is your opinion on this issue? Job bank for is it 10 million or a million? Because it's quite small for me to see. At 1,600 ringgit a month. What is your opinion on this issue? Do you understand the question, Mr. Mohammad? Because I don't really.
I guess it's to do. My guess is to do whether there is a fair wage to be given to people who work in the banks.
Okay.
A fair salary. I believe that is the question lah, based on what you've just read.
Yeah. For
1,600 there.
And for 1 million employees, I guess, job bank for 1 million. At 1,600 ringgit, a month.
Yeah, okay. If I understand the question correctly, whether the pay or the wage is fair and decent to the workers, my opinion again, I think it should be based on living wage, meaning that salary given to workers should be based on the cost of living of where he or she lives, so that he or she can live a decent quality life lah. Bukannya minta untuk mewah-mewah pun. It's just decent, just minimum standard. Dan kita tak maulah dekat sangat dengan poverty line. Poverty line 2,200. 1,002, then you easily boleh fall kalau if you sakit, if you kena buang kerja ke, whatever lah happen, accident ke, kita tak tahu kan, benda boleh berlaku kan. Accident tempat kerja menyebabkan kita tak boleh continue to work in the same position, then jatuh balik ke poverty kan. So in my opinion, we should be moving towards living wage. Living wage meaning that, for example, same position, katalah bank executive dekat KL mungkin tak samalah dengan bank executive dekat Kuala Perlis. Walaupun position
sama. The most popular.
Kodiang, yeah.
Most of the time it's Kodiang.
Okay. Yeah. So that's my opinion. Because people have to be compensated fairly according to cost of living. But obviously, on the worker side, there must be productivity lah. Because isn't it? It's a two-way. It's a two-way thing. I think one of the, in fact, we are talking under the platform of MPC here.
Yeah.
Malaysia Productivity Corporation. You know, whose promoting this importance of productivity. So I think there's a lot, there's rooms, plenty of rooms also for us to work on productivity. So yeah, so my answer is you should be moving to living wage based on Bank Negara study. For example, in 2016, living wage in KL is 2,700. 2,700. Kalau you single, bujang, you kena earn sekurang-kurangnya 2,700. Barulah you boleh live a quality life lah. Quality life, considering cost of living. Yeah.
I can see your daughter. I guess it's time for us to end the session. But again, I would like to go back to your point tadi, because I found it interesting when you said about Gini coefficient for every state, to kan living wage for every state. That is important for us to understand. Bukan bagi the same to everyone kan. That is not being fair actually when we give the same amount to everyone everywhere. Because what we need, what we understand as fairness is actually equality is about giving the right person the right time at the right place, the right amount. So it's about being fair. So I guess you can end this session. I would like to thank everyone, starting with MPC for having this webinar session, to Mr. Mohammad for his wonderful insight. I'm very lucky because I will get to talk to Mohammad again in the future. And hopefully, if there's any question, you can contact Cik Mohammad from his email, mah@nudge.com.my. And I would also like to thank everyone who listens, who participate, to Miss Hazlin, to Tengku Zak, and Cik Kamel for asking questions, and to everyone who listens. And hopefully, this session will bring goodness, and inshallah will help us in the future. So I guess with that, is there any last parting words from you, Sir Mohammad?
No, just thank you very much, everyone. I think this is just a conversation, meaning that here we are. I hope that it's been beneficial, meaningful. There's obviously there's still a lot more work in this area of income inequality and disparity. So let's play our role within our own capacity, wherever possible, to contribute towards reducing income inequality, and at the same time, by doing that, we will also improve Malaysia's competitiveness on the global scale, and hopefully by doing that, then Malaysia can become a more attractive destination for investors to come. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mohammad. So on that note, we'll end this session. Tomorrow there'll be another webinar on competitiveness on Belanjawan 2021 at 10 a.m. So maybe you guys can join us tomorrow. So see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Thank you.